Hey there, guys, gals, fans, and pals. Your buddy JohnMegacycle here. Another episode of Combine and Conquer. We are rocking the 0.3.5 version. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of do a quick summary video on some tips and tricks on how to get started with the game. In our 0.3.4 video, we did a much more broader overview of how modules work, how to make machines, how recipes work, resources, and that sort of a thing. But I wanted to just take very simple cut down video, and that's exactly what we're going to knock out today. The first thing to talk about is when it comes to landing with your starter, I highly recommend finding an area that is touching iron ore and coal, or stuff that's very close together, because it allows for a system like this. Now, we don't have any research. This is a fresh start. And what we had to do before in our previous video was a lot of looping and interlaying and belt nonsense that didn't really allow us to be very efficient. The game kind of forces you to get the first few researches so you can have better belt management, but by finding the right starting spot, we can get a little bit farther with that. As you can see, I've got my coal mines on the bottom, iron mines on top, direct feeding, and the only belts I'm really using are just pushing the finished product out. Now, just so you can see my starting location, I'm going to zoom all the way out on the map. You can get a pretty good idea of about where I am. So, we're just going to keep going out. So this landmass here, I don't know. These continents don't really have names or anything, but it's a little left of the middle of the map. And I'm just going to zoom all the way back in so you can see exactly, we're about right here-ish. A little hard to tell. Where did I just go now? They've got to zoom. Oh, no, I'm in the... When you scroll out too far, you actually get to the system view. So we'll see it switch in just a second. And there we go. That's why. So we got to switch back to planet view. So where I started was right about here-ish. And as you can see, we've got iron really close, coal really close, and this is kind of the kicker. So if you can minimize the amount of belts you need to get the product done, all the better. So first tip is starting location. My second tip that I'm going to bring up is the overlay cooldown. You get to the cooldown by clicking on this eyeball and then clicking the cooldown button. And what we can see under each machine is how long they're taking to operate, or the duration before they can operate again. Cooldown is a very common phrase from, I guess, any game that has like an ability. So like for me, it's World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, most MOBAs, or any game like I have an ability, I can use that ability, and then I've got to wait for it to be ready again. That's called a cooldown period. So I need the ability to cool down before I can use it again. And as we see it just zooming in, we can really get a really good grasp of timings, even if we don't pay attention to the cooldown number that's in the upper right. Now, what do I mean by all that? If we take a look at one of these furnace burners, and one of these arms, let's say this guy that's bringing coal into the process, we can actually see that this arm needs two operations. One to take coal and put it in the furnace, and one to go back to the beginning position. That is actually the perfect time it takes for the furnace burner to finish one iron ingot. So now we know this is the correct ratio. And again, without doing any math whatsoever, just take a look. And even if you don't want to get out a spreadsheet or do a bunch of calculations, you can get a really good feel for how long stuff takes. And this is just one small example. The same example can be related to your industry. If you're noticing something takes a lot of gears, what I have here is I'm actually making, I believe these are assemblers. So assemblers take 15 or 10 gears. That's a lot of time. So what I've added is instead of one machine or one assembler making gears, I have two assemblers making gears. And we can add a lot more to make sure that we speed up this process, and that by the time the assembler is done being made, we have enough gears to do another operation. So cooldown, that's my second tip. My third tip that I have for you relates to the industry in general. When things are being produced, I like to use this bus strategy. So all of my output iron is on a singular line, and I pull off of it what I need. For example, this works really well if a machine is full or doesn't need to produce anymore, because I'm not direct feeding and I'm not cutting the line, this works out very nicely. So if this machine right here, this machine's actually making belts, if this is done, for example, or I delete this arm right here, this process doesn't interfere with the rest of the line. So a bus methodology works out really quite nicely. And again, like I said with tip 2 with the timings, if you're ever noticing a process is kind of lagging behind or whatever, if you just want more of something, take a look and see what's taking longer in the process. And it's just a visual thing. It doesn't even have to be anything measured or calculated. If this line was empty, we're not producing enough iron. Or since this line is pretty much full, we can say, yeah, well, we've got enough material. I just need more assemblers. So that would be my third tip. The fourth tip I have for you today is power. After you get a bit more of your industry going on, you're going to realize you're not producing nearly enough power. And because we don't have to lay power lines or any sort of connections, we can actually build our power wherever we want. I've actually gone a little bit away from our base. We put down an influencer to give us buildable room. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these miners so they are completely covered by coal. Now this is a really neat little setup that I really, really like. Stumbled on it by accident, but I really enjoy it. One of these miners, when fully encapsulated by coal, can easily feed 2 of these burners that'll generate power. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some arms. Yeah, then let's actually add our batteries. I haven't added our batteries yet. But this adds a nice looking power base. It uses, well, it actually wastes very little space here. And as we can see by the cooldowns, as I mentioned before, we still have plenty of excess coal. So if you don't want to put coal on belts or run them to a different area or whatever, this works out really nicely. And don't forget, belts and the connections and everything requires some amount of power. So this actually keeps it fairly lean. We're not belting a bunch of stuff everywhere. This actually makes it a very copy-pastable kind of a setup. And all it just needs is get it somewhere in a coal patch, and there you go. Now, this doesn't very well use the coal patch, but you find 1 or 2 coal patches, throw down an influencer, you can get some really good power going on very, very quickly. My final tip for you today is if you ever feel like you're running low on supply, there's no reason to be patient about it. Ramp up your production system, ramp up your inputs, ramp up your manufactory, ramp up your refining, ramp up everything. We've got tons of iron, and I would like a lot more of these miners. So I've just added 4 more assemblers to try to get the job done a little bit faster. So, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Really quick tips. You don't have to be patient with this system. Build more stuff. There's no need to wait. Ramp up, make sure you've got plenty of belts and arms and smelters and just overproduce everything and you'll do just fine. So, thank you all for joining me. My name is JohnMegacycle. This has been quick tips and tricks with Combine and Conquer. 5 things to get you started. Yeah, thanks for joining me and I hope to catch you next time. Hey there guys, gals, fans, and pals. Thanks for checking out my video. I also want to take a moment to thank all my supporters and donators, and if you'd like to join up with me and game with my crew, all the information to get connected is in the description below. Thanks again, and I hope to catch you next time.